What's up? So first of all, I want to thank you for going along on this road trip to discover the top 10 terrible audition mistakes that you obviously want to avoid. This all came about because I wrote a blog post, and by far it has been the most popular article that I have written, and the download that is provided on the blog has been downloaded the most out of any of my freebies. So what I decided to do is go into detail on all 10 of these terrible audition mistakes that you obviously don't want to make. And so in this video, we're going to talk about mistake number 4, not taking the application and the interview processes seriously. Alright, so when I started to prepare for this video and really started to take my notes on some tips for you for audition mistake number 4, not taking the application and interview process seriously, I started to become extremely overwhelmed. And it's because I was trying to condense so much information into like a 3 to 7 minute video. We have a sideline application course that you can take online that is well over an hour, as well as a sideline interview virtual training that you can take that's over an hour. So I was trying to take 2 hours of great content and boil it down to like 5 minutes. And I was starting to get stressed and extremely overwhelmed. So what I decided to do was to break this audition mistake into 2 parts. So for this video, I am going to focus on part 1, which is all about the actual application. Now keep in mind that the actual application itself is normally in 2 parts. So you normally have the actual form that you need to fill out, and most teams ask that you submit a picture as well. Now I recently did a video on how to take breathtaking photos for your application, so I'll be sure to include a link below for that, so you definitely want to check that out as well. But for this video, I'm going to focus on the actual form itself, so that you can make sure that you properly prepare for that. So keep in mind that normally the application itself, along with your picture, is the first impression. It kind of sets the stage for the audition process. Most teams require you to submit your application before the day of auditions. There are some teams that allow you to come in on the day of auditions and turn in your application, but I highly encourage you to get that application in early. So why? First of all, some teams use that to assign numbers. So those that turn in their application first will get numbers that are later in the process. So instead of being number 1 and number 2, you could be number 150, which means you have a little bit more time to practice the choreography and the material and kind of get your mind right. Also, because the directors, the judges, the coaches, all of that have the opportunity to review your application and to organize it. They normally organize it either in alphabetical order or by when you submitted your application, and they do take the time to read these applications, and they are making notes on who they want to look out for during the audition process. So making sure that you just give them such a good first impression and giving them the opportunity to read through your credentials and look at how beautiful you are is only going to set you up for success, obviously, during the actual audition process. So if you can, please try to submit your application a little bit early. Now here's what I want you to do before I actually get into my tips, because you know I always have tips. I want you to do some homework for me. When you finish watching this video, I want you to write down a couple of things. I want you to think about your attributes, your strengths, your talents, any very unique or different experiences that you have had in your life. I want you to think about your accomplishments, both on a personal level as well as a professional level, and just your uniqueness. So what makes you different? What makes you stand out from all of the other competition? And the reason that I really want you to take the time to think through this and write these down is because during the application process, as well as during the interview process, which is part 2 of this entire audition mistake, you really want to try to weave in these amazing characteristics and these amazing talents or accomplishments that you have into your responses. So if you can, please take the time to just jot those things down, give yourself a pat on the back, recognize yourself for everything that you've accomplished in your life, and really think hard about what makes you different from the candidate to your right and the candidate to your left, okay? So to kind of move on, when we were preparing for the Sideline application virtual training, we literally looked at any and every audition application that we could find online. And so there are some common elements that we saw over and over again within the application process. So I wanted to kind of go over those. I'm going to try to go as fast as I can. It's so much information. So the first thing that you're going to see on most applications is just general information. So they obviously want to know your name and your address, your contact information, your date of birth, your email. Some even ask for your social security number and your driver's license. They may want to know your social media accounts. And so that's really important because that means that they might go looking at your social media. So hint, hint, extra bonus tip here, clean it up or make your account private. So really, your online presence is extremely, extremely important in this day and age. So just make sure you clean up your social media presence and that you're putting out, you know, something that you would want a team or, you know, a company that you're applying for to actually see and be aware of. They also might ask for your emergency contact information, just in case. You never know, something could happen at auditions. Next, they want to know about your educational background. So a lot of applications do ask for the high school that you graduated from because they know that there could be some ladies that just recently graduated from high school. They want to know the colleges that you graduated from or the degrees that you have, the years in which you graduated, and then obviously any honors that you have both in high school and in college. They're going to want to know your graduation dates, if you were involved in any sports or activities, any clubs, any community service, if you had any academic honors. So all of that around education, you want to make sure that you include. Next, they're going to ask about employment. So a lot of times there are teams that you have to be at least 21 to apply for and to be a part of. So they expect that you would have a job. So they want to know your current employer, what your title was, maybe the supervisor's name and the contact information for the supervisor, the tenure at your job, and then any references potentially. So you never know, you just want to be prepared to answer all of these questions about your employment history. Next, your experience and skills in the realm of cheerleading and dance. So be prepared to list out any and all of your dance experience, the types of dance that you're trained in, the number of years that you participated in certain programs or on teams. Also, cheerleading, the same thing. If you held, if you were a captain, or if you were a cheerleader in high school or college, if your team went to any type of championships and you all won, they would want to know that. They also would want to know your tumbling experience, if you were involved in pageants, or if you have any modeling experience, and then they could ask for references in this section as well. The next area that they may focus on are kind of just additional questions that may fall out of that realm. So they may be looking for any other special skills or talents that you can bring to the team. So maybe singing, or maybe you play an instrument, and that's because they do a lot of community service and outreach, and sometimes teams even travel abroad and they might have a variety show. So if you know how to tap, that might be pretty cool to include in their show. So any type of additional skills or talents that you have. Any fitness experience that you have. A lot of teams now are really, really into fitness, and they're doing fitness videos and sharing those online. If you have TV, film, acting, commercial experience, all of that is a plus. Public speaking, whether it's at work or in front of, you know, hundreds of people at, you know, a networking event, they would want to know about your public speaking experience. If you are a choreographer or a dance instructor for a high school, a college, or any type of team, if you've been a judge for cheerleading or dance, or even in the pageant world, your hobbies, any community service that you have participated in, if you are a tutor or a mentor and you help children, things like that, and then obviously any awards, honors, or distinctions that you have and that you can put on your application as well. So all of these things are things that you want to think about, and you want to write them down so that you can include these things in your actual application. Up next, you may be asked questions. So I just wanted to throw out a couple of the questions that you might be asked so that you are prepared. So things like, have you ever been convicted of a felony? I hope you can say no to that one. That is on many applications, believe it or not. Are you legally authorized to work in the United States without restrictions? So this is important, especially for ladies that are coming overseas and that might need some sort of work visa. They do want to know this ahead of time. Are you fluent in another language? If you are, this is definitely something you want to pat yourself on the back about and include on your application. How did you hear about our auditions? Have you ever performed in public, and if so, in what capacity? Are you able to perform outdoors in extreme weather? Extremely important, especially for the NFL, especially on the East Coast. Why do you want to be a part of this team? Such a good question, and this is one that I'll talk about later on down the road in another video. Have you been a part of another professional dance team? And if you have, you definitely want to include that. And are you available during, a certain period of time or dates for games, practices, promotions, and things like that? So these are just some of the questions, some of the elements that could show up on the application. So you really want to make sure that you take a look at what they expect and what they require from an application standpoint. So up next, let's talk about our top 5 application tips. All right, here we go. So my top tip number 1, you guessed it, you have to do your research. I know, broken record, but it is so true in almost every element of the audition process. You have to do your research. So why is it so important? So first of all, you want to make sure that you meet the requirements of the team. So for example, if they say you have to be at least 21 years of age and you're only 18, then there's really no point in filling out the application. Another thing, they may say that you have to have either a full-time job, be a full-time student, or be a mom. So you want to make sure, obviously, that you fit into one of those categories. Some teams require that you have your own transportation because you've got to be able to get to practices and games and promotions and appearances. So just check the requirements to make sure that you fulfill all of them so that you'll even know whether or not to move forward in the actual application process. You also want to do your research so that you can show your alignment. And so what do I mean by that? So earlier I asked you to do some homework and really think about your attributes, your skills, some of your experiences and your accomplishments, both professional and personal. And you want to try to weave those into the responses. So for example, let's say you do your research on the team and you uncover that they are really big into their junior dance or junior cheer program and they love to give back to little children. Well, if you happen to be a school teacher or you happen to be a mentor or you're involved in any clubs and activities that service children, then you're going to want to make sure that you weave that into one of your responses and include that in the application. Let's say the organization goes on a lot of USO or AFE tours overseas and do performance tours for our troops. Well, if you are active duty or a veteran or have any experience with community service when it comes to our military, then you're obviously going to want to include that in your application. Another example, most teams are heavy into community service and community outreach. After all, you are going to be an ambassador for that team. So any type of community service that you have, you want to make sure that you include that on your application. So again, making sure that you do your research and then showing the alignment with your personal skills and your experiences to the attributes and the accomplishments of the team that you plan to audition for. Tip number 2, you have to practice, practice, practice. And I know that this sounds kind of weird, but you want to do a practice round of filling out the application. So let's say it's a PDF and you can only write it in. Well, that means you only have a certain amount of space to write in your responses. So you have to make sure that your responses are short enough and will actually fit. Let's say it's a PDF that you can save and then attach and send in. Again, you have to make sure that you select the right font size and that you're able to fill it in and get all of the information that you want and include all the information in that small space that they give you. So really just making sure that you're practicing your spacing, and then also accuracy of the information, and then English 101, right? So spelling, your grammatical errors, you want to make sure that you avoid those at all costs. And sentence structure. So just my mom, who is an English teacher, would constantly correct me whenever I would say anything that was slightly off or wrong. It was just in her nature. Well, that makes a good or a really bad first impression. So you really want to make sure that you practice English 101 and read through all of your responses out loud to make sure that they are grammatically correct. I know that sounds weird and you're like, really, Janine? I don't have time to sit here and fill this out and then have to refill it out. Well, yeah, you do, because it's that important. So please just make sure that you do that. All right, I'm gonna move on. Number 3, make yourself shine. That's why, again, I gave you that homework. I really want you to take the time to think about how wonderful and awesome you are. You know, day to day, we are so hard on ourselves. We don't even remember that we have traveled abroad more than we have traveled in the United States. We don't even remember that the fact that we speak 2 or 3 additional languages is a big deal. We don't, remember that we were promoted to a manager at the young age of 23 in your organization, or that your boss gives you the opportunity to speak at conferences, or that you plan and run events in which thousands of people come. There are so many things that you probably do that are just day-to-day activities that you don't even realize are big deals. So I really want you to think about it and jot them down so that you remember them, and then make yourself shine. I call it selfless bragging, because on an application you have to market yourself. If you're not going to be in your corner, who else is going to be there? So you have to root for yourself, and the best way to do that is through your application. Put it all out there on black and white so that they can see how amazing you are in all of these various different aspects of your life. All right, up next, number 4, no question left behind. All right, so what do I mean by this? So first of all, if you don't have a response to a question because you just don't have that experience, I would rather you put NA than to just leave it blank. So don't leave anything blank if you can avoid it, okay? But in some cases, for example, if they ask if you have pageantry background and you don't, you can't write that you do, right? So you could just put NA or you could put no. All right, so just don't leave anything blank. Also, think about this. If you are effectively doing your research and if you are effectively preparing ahead of time, then you would have already looked at the application of the team that you want to audition for well in advance. If you do that, you're going to realize what your OFIs are. You're going to realize your opportunities for improvement. You're going to realize those questions that you would have to leave blank because you just don't have a response for. And in some cases, that's okay, right? If you don't know another language, you don't know another language. If you've never been in a pageant, you've never been in a pageant. But who's to say that you can't get some modeling experience and go to a modeling school and practice modeling and get comfortable with that? That's going to help you anyway when you go to take your pictures and when you have to do your calendar shoot once you make the team. So you can go ahead and go to a modeling school. Or, let's say that for most applications, there's going to be a question around community service. Why not think about what you're passionate about and what you enjoy doing and who you want to give back to and in what capacity, and why not start volunteering now so that you can then make sure that you have responses to the majority of the questions on that application. In addition, that's really going to help for the interview portion as well. So just keep in mind, no question left behind. All right, number 5, this goes without saying, but I feel like I have to say it. You need to be neat and professional. So just really make sure that you do number 2 by practicing. And that sounded really weird. Do number 2. You know what I mean though, right? Make sure that you implement the top 2 tip, which was to have the practice round and filling out your application so that you can just make sure that it looks very professional and that it looks extremely, extremely neat. It also would be very smart to have a friend or someone else proof your application for you as well. So that's why it's really important to practice it out first before you actually submit it. And even online, because sometimes when you have to submit online, they give you a character count. So you want to make sure that you know what the character count is and that you write it out and type it out and do all of that ahead of time before you actually have to submit it. You also might want to, I know that I mentioned reading it out loud, but copy and paste your responses into a Word document and do a spell check as well, because sometimes, especially if you're submitting it online, and definitely if you have to fill it in or write it in, you're not going to have spell check. So just make sure that you're extremely neat and very professional, that it looks very professional. And then I want to give you a bonus tip. You have to tell the truth. So just be truthful. You know, I would rather you have a question and that's left behind and leave it, you know, with an NA than to tell a false truth, okay? So just make sure that you are very truthful in everything that you write in the application, because this power of the internet and research and everything else, people will eventually find out if you are lying about anything, and it's just not worth it. And you just don't want to start off on the wrong side of the fence or whatever. You don't want to start off on a wrong note by not being truthful with everything. So just be mindful of that. So that's really it. Those are my top 5 application tips, along with the bonus tips of being truthful. I hope that this was helpful. I know it was a lot of information, and I know this was a long video, but if you liked it, please give us a thumbs up. If you have any other ideas or suggestions, or even additional questions that were asked on an application that you recently filled out, please go ahead and make a comment below. We would really appreciate it. Just to keep in mind, this was part 1 of mistake number 4. In part 2, which is coming soon, we're gonna actually go over the interview process. So be tuned and stay tuned for that one coming up. All right, that's it for now. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Be sure to visit us at sidelineprep.com. Go to our blog so that you can read this top 10 terrible audition mistake blog and grab our freebie. It's full of the top 10 mistakes, along with cheat sheets and, you know, action sheets and everything else. So be sure to grab that, and then connect with us, please, on social media. We would love to stay connected with you day in and day out. All right, make it a great day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.